Hey everyone, it's Sleepy Reader, aka Damien. I am back with, first in a month or month and a half or so, back with a comic book countdown where I take the comics I bought this past Wednesday and that I read and rank them. This week it was only six comics. There was a seventh, Heavy Metal, which I didn't get around to reading yet. And I actually am getting to have a stack of heavy metals, so that's something I got to get on top of. But so I'll just tackle the six sort of regular size comics I got this past week, and then at the end I'll talk about another comic I'm not going to rank or anything that I bought, which I think came out a few weeks ago. If you want to hear a whole lot more of me talking comics, I was a guest this past Sunday and most recent Sunday, so twice a guest on a live chat where we just kick back and talk about what comics we've read recently. And that was on LahRasa's channel. It was with LahRasa and Comic Crack. So I'll put links for those below in case you have a lot of time on your hand and want to hear us chat comics. You can listen to it podcast style, I would think. So, yeah, this week was kind of a minor week for me for whatever reason. But there were definitely comics I enjoyed and some that I enjoyed not so much. And so in at number 6 was Post Americana from Steve Scroce with colors from Dave Stewart. And so it's written and drawn by Steve Scroce. He did a great job on Maestros, a great job on We Stand on Guard, but Post Americana is not working for me. He may be doing a great job of it for people who like this sort of thing. It reminds me a bit of, I haven't read a lot of them, but what I think that Avatar comics are like, the real gross out comics. This is just full of cannibalism and brutality and blood and guts and amputations. And it puts me in a bad mood. I could read it. It's not a terrible comic if you're in the mood for a really brutal post-apocalyptic story. But I think I just don't need that in my life. There's plenty of other stuff to read. So I'll be dropping this. It's a shame because I was quite the fan of his artwork on other things. And he seems in the realm of Chris Burnham and Frank Quitely a little bit and that sort of thing. But Juan Jose Ripe, perhaps. But just the healthy decision for me is to drop it. In at number 5 is Strange Adventures. I think this is a 12, it probably says right there, right? 8 of 12. I'm definitely at this point sticking it out to the end. But to tell the truth, I've lost the thread a bit. I'm having trouble connecting the dots from what I remember from past issues to this issue, and yeah, it doesn't all make sense. The artwork is incredible by the double artist team of Mick Gerards and Evan Shaner. I think at times they even switch up between panels, if I'm understanding what's going on correctly. So it's still a thrilling comic from an art point of view, and maybe if I were able to concentrate and focus better on the story, it would make more sense to me, and I would think it was pretty brilliant. It seems like I forget what they're called, like the Picts or something, these aliens captured him and psychologically tortured him, and now they consider him their great slaughterer. Another thing that's kind of, and now they're attacking Earth. Another thing that's kind of weird for me about, this is getting really picky about Strange Adventures, is I don't think of Adam Strange as the kind of hero who slaughters whole armies. I think of him as someone who solves little interesting science fiction problems. But he's not superhuman, he's just heroic, or was heroic. So there's a lot I don't fully comprehend in Strange Adventures. And it does make me think the next time there's another miniseries, where Tom King takes some more obscure character from Marvel or DC and tries to do something interesting with them, do I want to follow him down that road anymore? I'm not getting the Bat and Cat comic. I didn't finish reading his Batman series, but I did like, for the most part, his Mr. Miracle, and I had high hopes for Strange Adventures. And it may be something, I will get all the issues, and maybe I'll reread them all together, and maybe then it will really click. In at number 4, I'm sad to say that this once kind of favorite, it was always up and down because it's short stories, so there's good ones and bad ones. But now we're on issue 4 of the latest volume, Edgar Allan Poe's Snifter of Blood, and none of them have been a real knockout to me. None of them have had stories that really wowed me. So I feel like the sizzle is gone off of this this little franchise that kind of took a humorous and horrific approach to little riffs on Edgar Allan Poe. And the stories here just seem to be reaching more. They're not quite as funny or as avant-garde or as horrific as they should be. There's nothing wrong with them. I really like the art on the first one by Sandy Jarrell, who's kind of at times not here so much, but he's done a lot of kind of retro kind of comics artwork, and he's definitely someone who's underutilized so far by the comics industry, and it does show good taste by Ahoy for using him. But the story itself was more a few riffs on the idea of Edgar Allan Poe in Hollywood without much of it gelling at all. And then the second one, I don't know if it was even a reference to an Edgar Allan Poe story about a train collector. What was it called? It doesn't have the title in the story, but on the contents page it's called Winston. It looked nice also, actually, but it just didn't do a whole lot for me. It was a slightly Twilight Zone-ish feeling without much of a conclusion. And I just wasn't in the mood to read the prose. I know I often like the prose shorts that they have at the back of Ahoy Comics. But yeah, so I'll still keep getting this, but with much reduced expectations. I was pleasantly surprised by Superman versus Imperious Lex. I'd forgotten that it was written by Mark Russell, and I was reading halfway through, and I was thinking, well, this is different than the other Future State comics I read, most of which have been kind of but this is a Mark Russell comic. It's not a DC comic, really. It exists in Mark Russell world. Sadly, the Superman costume is hideous. I don't know if that is a design forced upon them by the larger Future State program. But other than that, it's a very interesting play on the idea of dictators or charismatic leaders who lie to their population, and the price of all that and where it ultimately leads. And it had very pleasing art by Steve Pugh. The colors, I wasn't that thrilled by the colors. They were better than bad colors. I mean, but something about them seemed to lessen my enjoyment of Steve Pugh's art, but not to a huge degree. It's interesting. You can see there Luthor. He seems to be wearing a mask and fake hands, and I don't know what's underneath, and I don't know if that ties into other things going on in Future State or if that will be revealed next issue, because these Future State things are just 2-issue stories. But there's a lot of fun here. You just have to read it not expecting it to be like a mainline DC story, but just some sort of odd parable about politics and lies and exploitation, all out of the Mark Russell handbook of kinds of plots that he would do. For those who don't remember, he's the one who did Billionaire Island and the incredible updating of the Flintstones for DC a while back. So in at number 2 was the final issue of Captain Weird Cosmogog. and this gets huge points for the artwork, which is by Tyler Crook, who's perhaps best known for working with Colin Bunn on that horror series, which is suddenly slipping my mind, the name of it, Harrow County. But and the work there is beautiful, but it's really fun to see him kind of tackle this cosmic superhero stuff, and it makes me wish he will get the opportunity to do more of that somewhere down the line. It'd be great if someone at like Image, some really hot writer, teams up with him for some kind of fun excursion into the wilder, more cosmic world in a slightly longer series. Now, what keeps this from being like my #1 comic, because it's definitely, I love this art. And I enjoyed the way this series explored the childhood of Colonel Weird, but when it all comes down to it at the end of the day, at the end of this issue, you realize the whole thing is purely a footnote, a side story to the main Black Hammer story that we got and that wrapped up a while ago. It doesn't make sense on its own. It's just sort of like, well, what was going on to this character during some of these parts of that story that we've already read? And what motivated him somewhat. It doesn't give all the answers even, but here are some of his motivations and what was going on with him that led up to certain points in that other story. So it's going to make it'll be more fun if I ever did a reread of Black Hammer to reread this alongside it. And finally, #1, it's perhaps going to get boring, always having Usagi Yojimbo near the top of the list or at the top of the list. But I just loved this, and I loved the last issue of Wanderer's Road also. I think the 3 stories we've gotten so far in this Wanderer's Road reprint series make a little trilogy about this lizard creature who I've been calling Eep, but I think the characters started calling him Spot. So the first story in issue #1 of Wanderer's Road had the introduction of Spot and his friendship, his relationship with Usagi. The last issue, oh man, what happened in that issue? Anyway, the last issue was really great and had some more Eep/Spot. And then this issue, the lizard pet plays a really important role, and at the end of the story parts ways with Usagi. And on top of that, we have this really fascinating kind of evil character of this blind pig samurai who previously had his snout cut off by Usagi and now wears a wooden snout because he depends almost entirely, well, you must depend on sound and smell, but it sounds like smell is his most important sense. So it's kind of a bizarre story. It's kind of a simple story, but it's moving, especially in the context of the 2 other stories. But every issue of Wanderer's Road has been a standalone. So for a while ago, I was thinking, do I want to get all these Usagi reprints in floppy issues or wait for the color edition in a hardback? But I am so sold on Usagi Yojimbo that I'm definitely picking up everything that as it comes out in floppies, and then I'll probably double dip when or if it comes out in hardback. I won't get the paperbacks, but so yeah, it was deeply satisfying to me, partially based on having read a lot of Usagi now over this past year. I think I know I included Usagi in my best of 2020 list, and this only solidifies that feeling that was a good choice. And here is one of those. So that was my 6, the only 6. This is Captain America 117, a Stan Lee Gene Colan comic that includes the first appearance. Okay, that's frustrating. Using QuickTime on my Mac has always made it very easy to quickly make videos and quickly post them to YouTube. But since the new operating system, it's been crashing a lot. So let's hope I can just wrap up here. I was saying I picked up this, what do you call it, facsimile of the first appearance of the Falcon. I don't care about the first appearance of the Falcon, but it's Gene Colan and it's Stan Lee, and I decided to pick it up. And I just had a really great time reading it. There's a lot of silly aspects to the story, but the way they're done within the context of what we're reading and the way it's presented, it all worked great for me. Now, granted, this is that period of comics like a year or two before I started reading comics as a kid, and I always especially gravitated towards what came just before I started reading Marvel comics. But I really liked the art in this glossy format, and I feel somehow it's truer to my childhood memories of the really bright comics. And I don't know, I can't go back in time and see how bright those newsprint comics were when I first picked them up off the shelves in 1971. But it's to me, it's a really great way to take in this art. It's not only drawn by Gene Colan, but it's inked by Joe Sinnott. So two of the greats of that era. Not automatically a natural fit style-wise, and yet Joe Sinnott manages to make it work while working over the sort of moodier pencils of Gene Colan. And it's this crazy story where the Red Skull has taken over Captain America's body and put Captain America in his body, and through the power of the Cosmic Cube, magically sent him to this island where all of the Red Skull's betrayed old comrades are, who will then want to kill him. But one of the more bizarre things is when Steve Rogers, takes off the Red Skull mask. I always thought it was like seared onto the guy's face, but maybe at this time it was not. And then he uses clay he finds in the ground to put on his face to disguise his face. So we never see what the Red Skull's face actually looks like. We just later see the clay created face. That part is totally unbelievable. But I really liked, Stan Lee is not using, as you can see, he's not using captions all over the place, but he does have people sort of explaining what they're doing in the dialogue and in their thought balloons. And it really works for me. Again, nostalgia may be a part of it, but as silly as that should be, the way people talk and everything, you just accept it and you go with it, and it's a good storytelling technique. So I guess I'm going to have to, I probably have in an omnibus the stories before and after this. I'm going to have to go back and read those. But someone suggested, I think it might have been Howler Mouse, like they should put out, recreate entire years of Marvel history by putting out facsimile comics. And I could almost see myself going there and going with it. And there's something, it probably because of when he was working with the really good artists like Gene Colan or Jack Kirby or Steve Ditko, that along with their storytelling, Stan Lee adds in a real rhythm to it with his use of dialogue and how much dialogue he puts in everywhere. So there's just something really readable about it. And then I ended up reading the letters page where everyone on this letters page is complaining about Rick Jones becoming the new sidekick to Captain America, which is interesting because in this issue, they decided to get rid of Rick Jones as his sidekick and make the Falcon, this new hero, his sidekick. And I really loved reading the Marvel bullpen page with all the descriptions of all the comics coming out. I think they had about 24 comics come out that month. And, where they talk about... Some of the things are funny, like, it looks as though our sunny California has been agreeing with the king. They mean Jack Kirby. Yep. Since moving out there, Jolly Jack Kirby has been working faster than ever and is actually getting ahead of his superhuman schedule. This means he may have time to handle still another mag within the next year. So here's your chance to sound off again, faithful one. Which strip is most worthy of the Master's touch? Should we finally launch the Inhumans, Doctor Doom, Kazar? Or do you have another oldie or newie you'd like him to bring to life? Sock it to us, sweetie, and we'll let you know how the mail keeps coming in. The funny thing is they had Jack Kirby do the Inhumans. They also launched a Kazar series and a Doctor Doom series around that time. But little did they know Jack Kirby was already planning to leave by the time he was out in California. Probably in talks with Carmine Infantino as they were writing that. Anyway, like there's some examples of beautiful panels by Gene Colan are there. So just a pleasure, and I don't know, it's the old man in me, right? Why can't they do comics like this anymore? I think older readers and younger readers could enjoy it, but perhaps only older readers who were born into that era. Who knows? Okay, I will be back soon. Talk to y'all later.